Welcome to the Cumbria Business Growth Hub podcast. I'm joined by John Gray and Jonathan Nelson of River Capital. River Capital is an investment firm serving businesses in the northwest of England. And today we're going to be discussing finance options currently available to Cumbrian businesses and how to access them. So welcome to the podcast, both. John, can you just start off by telling me a bit about River Capital? And then can you both tell me about your backgrounds and what you do at the firm?
Cheers, Joe. Thank you very much. So, River Capital is an alternative investment fund. So we are a fund manager for investors. What we look to do is work with SMEs to kind of fuel their ambition. So that's looking at the growth and how we can support them to get through that growth ambition. And that's generally kind of filling a gap between where mainstream funders maybe struggle to meet the needs of the business. So startups, early stage businesses, or slightly riskier expansions. In terms of products, we've got a full suite of products. So that's venture capital, private equity, and the debt products, ranging from 25,000 up to £2 million across the Northwest. A bit about me. So my background starts as I was a scientific manufacturer down in London, took a career change after 10 years and decided to go into finance, worked as a corporate banker with one of the main banks for 12 years, and then joined River Capital, heading up the debt team. And the reason why I did that switch was I got a little bit frustrated around seeing opportunities for SMEs that I wanted to support and help them to achieve. And then I sat down with the CEO of River Capital and kind of could see the passion in the business to support SMEs. So I was brought into that journey, and that's why I joined River Capital, to kind of make sure every SME kind of gets the chance to achieve their ambition. Some don't succeed, some do, but it's just giving them that chance. I head up a team of 8 investment managers. And again, everyone in the team has that same drive and ethos around providing debt solutions to help SMEs grow. One of the investment managers on the line with me now, it's Jonathan. So I'll throw over to Jonathan and let him introduce himself and what he kind of does.
Thanks, John. Hi, hi, Joe. I'm certainly not a scientist. It wasn't my best subject at school. In fact, Latin was bizarrely my best subject at school, and that I'm not sure that served any purpose. So I joined the Royal Bank of Scotland when I was 18, and with my first few wage packets, I bought a really dodgy maroon coloured mini Metro, which was my pride and joy, and sort of never left finance ever since. And I'm unfortunately 55 now. So my early career was Royal Bank of Scotland, relationship management. I guess I've had a real mix, really. I also wanted to see what it was like working for myself. So I had a franchise operation for 5 years. I worked then for the Access to Finance service, which was part of Boost Business Lancashire Growth Hub, working with SMEs, helping them to become what they call investment ready. So if they're looking for finance, working with them on the business plan, the cash flow forecasts, and basically ensuring that they've got the best opportunity to secure the finance that they needed. I was also a fund manager working for GC Business Finance for 5 years. That was relating to a fund run by Lancashire County Council. And most latterly, I moved to River Capital in June this year as an investment manager, where I helped deliver the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund to SMEs in Cumbria and Lancashire also, where the loans range between £25,000 and £100,000. I think that's sort of quite a quickly run brief resume of my 38-year career in finance.
And Joe, it's probably worth mentioning at this point around NPIF 1 and NPIF 2. Mm-hmm. So, I just touched on that we're a Northwest investment company. Looking at Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund 1, we originally looked after the Liverpool part of it. And when that came to an end, ourselves and our partner firm, GC Business Finance, we won the second fund. And as part of that, River Capital decided to take on the Lancashire and the Cumbria aspects of that fund. So it's a new market for us in a way, putting the NPIF fund out into Lancashire and Cumbria, hence why Jonathan was recruited into River Capital.
Got you. Right. That's brilliant. Yeah, we'll get on to discuss that in a bit more depth. Yeah, interesting to hear your backgrounds, and great to hear, Jonathan, that you've been involved in growth hubs before, like ours, and that you're extending your work into Cumbria. So Jonathan, can you just tell us about your work in Cumbria and the office in Kendal and how that's going?
Yeah, so obviously I only started, we're 4 months into my new role with River Capital now. So Cumbria, which is an excellent thing, is a completely new, new patch to me. So for me, that's a positive aspect. It's not a question of where do we start and what do we do. So, my remit is to cover Cumbria, which is excellent. I might well do some name dropping here, but it just gives people a flavour of where we're at the moment, albeit there's a lot of work still to do to cover the area. But we've got an office where it was Moore and Smalley Accountants, which now known as MHA, based in Kendal, which we utilise. I think if it's all right, I'll just run through a few events, because obviously I think that River Capital's a new name, Jonathan Nelson's a new name. Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund 2, British Business might well be new to a lot of people as well. So we've attended events we've done our own roadshow, the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund 2, sorry, it's a long name, in Newby Bridge. We've attended a Shout Network event at Carlisle Racecourse, the Cumbria Chamber Conference very recently in Kendal, which was excellent, really well attended. There's a Carlisle Ambassadors event that I'm attending in November as well. And we've had to do, like my job, there's a lot of Teams meetings. So, I've met with Paul Foster, who's head of programs and enterprise in Cumbria, and Lucy Johnson as well. Leslie Robinson from the Chamber I've met also. A chap called John McAllister at Barclays Eagle Lab over in Whitehaven. So there's still a lot of work to be done. I'm working with a business in Barrow, a business in Penrith, which are, inquiries that we've received so far. Like I said, there's a lot of work to be done. I've done some groundwork in the first few months, but we need to get out to the SMEs.
Yeah, and it's first, we're making friends, and from those friends, we're getting the applicants applying for funding, and it's just keeping that momentum going. In a nutshell, we've got a pot of money. We like to try and get it out into the marketplace. That is our fundamental job.
Yeah, the funding that's available to Cumbria businesses. Can you talk about that money that's available and what's the eligibility and what you're looking to do with it?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of River Capital, there's only one fund that we have that won't extend to the Northwest. So I'll talk about it in chunks. Obviously, the debt one is my bread and butter, which I'll probably talk about a bit more. But I mean, we can do our private equity fund up there, which goes from 250 up to £2 million of investment, looking at minority stakes in businesses. Got our Fund AI, which is our venture capital fund. Again, 250 up to £2 million, looking at data rich or data intensive businesses with maybe an AI angle on them. But in terms of debt, we can do funding from anywhere from 25,000 up to £500,000. And it all depends on the business need. So one fund is the MPIF2 fund, the smaller loan fund, which we touched on, which is 25 to £100,000. This generally looks at startup businesses through to very early businesses, and it's kind of that enabler trying to fill a gap to help businesses achieve growth. In terms of eligibility, it's very hard to say exactly the details because it all depends on the business that comes forward. We always say it's about the conversation. So we need to understand what they want, how they're trying to get there, and who else are they talking to? What does the funding package they've already got in place look like? So there's lots of conversations that the investment managers have to understand how to help that business achieve growth. Some we can help, some we can't, but it's that conversation that we have to have that kind of helps us find out. But, I touched on saying that that's for startups and early businesses, but actually we do have expansion as well. So it could be a business that's, traded for a few years, just looking to access new markets, maybe needs to look at some marketing spend or some staff. Again, we can help look at that proposal and see if that's something that's fundable. We also have our Northwest Business Growth Loan Fund, which is £100,000 up to £500,000. This is more focused on the growth through expansion. So this is more established businesses. Maybe they're looking at succession planning, so an MBO, or they're looking at acquisition or some sort of working capital funding. So again, it's that conversation with the business around what do they need and how does it fit in? And again, not trying to compete with the banks. It's just, if the banks are struggling to get to the full investment level, then we will look at it to see whether it's something that the Business Growth Loan Fund can do as well. Key thing to all of the funding that we do on the debt side is kind of that social impact angle, job creation, environmental progress. So it's not saying that someone has to be fully environmentally compliant in terms of, off-grid, It's more saying that they're on that journey to ESG. So we like to measure those aspects of it. But I mean, fundamentally, it's about stimulating that SME ecosystem. Creating jobs creates ripple effects across the economy. And so that's why that social angle is measured.
That's interesting, isn't it? That it's kind of you're measuring not just based on the numbers, but on like the sort of societal outcomes that business can have.
Yes, exactly. And it's a common thread within the alternative funder sector that we operate in. It is, what are you doing that's just beyond the commercial numbers? And, adding value to the business ecosystem, and that's a strategy at the heart of River Capital as well.
Excellent.
Can I just come in just very,
yeah,
very
of course,
quickly, if you don't mind? So it was only a brief point to add on to John. So, I have the pleasure of having to write the credit papers, which, we have to do. But within a credit paper of old was always a background and, it was numbers from sort of my, my banking days. But now my credit paper involves, are we safeguarding jobs? Are we creating jobs? The environment. So it's a far more, what I would class as a far more rounded approach rather than just the figures are important. Of course they are, but
yeah,
we look at what I would say is the bigger picture as well.
Sure. Yeah. There's a very close correlation, isn't there, between kind of economic opportunity and things like education outcomes, health outcomes, places improve. And yeah, so that's brilliant that you're measuring this when sort of considering businesses for funding. Just to stay with yourself, Jonathan, how should a business which is looking for investment prepare kind of in terms of getting the ESG stuff lined up and sort of the governance, and how should they be looking to get ready for that?
If I see businesses who could just approach me and just say, there you go, we've got everything, we've got absolutely everything you need, but then others need a lot more, what I would class as hand holding. So we use the terminology that you said before about being investment ready. So the type of information that I would require to assess an application is a business plan. So I don't necessarily need an all singing, all dancing business plan, but it's a coverage of headlines of what the business is and the people behind the business and what market it's in and the competition. We do need financials. Some are at a very early stage where, they might not have historic numbers. So we would request a 12-month, 2-year cash flow forecast, depending upon what we see the perceived risk as being. Bank statements. It's quite standard thing, really. I have the benefit of being able to use a lovely lady who I've known for a long, long time, Maria Ramsdale, who runs the Access to Finance service. So Maria is, fabulous in working with those businesses, helping them be in a position to approach me for the funding that they need. I will handhold as much as I possibly can, but every business will have me as a point of contact right from the very start to the very end. And then once a successful loan completes, they're then assigned, I don't know whether a case manager, relationship manager is the right word, but they're certainly assigned one of my colleagues who will maintain the relationship with the business once the loan's completed. So the help's there. It's, call me old fashioned, but I'm very much into the personal aspect. So, everything, it's not done online. It's all conducted through human beings, me coming out to see the business and meeting the people and the employees behind that business. So I like the way we do it, and touch wood, it's successful too.
Yeah, and that links back into your earlier comment, Joe, around what we do in Kendal. It's all about that business network and our friends. So as Jonathan said, we will handhold as much as we can, but sometimes we need to get friends involved. So if an SME has a particular problem, we know who to signpost it to and who to get support from. For example, if you're looking at a £500,000 MBO, then we need advisors in there, someone who's can help them properly forecast and do the financial models. So knowing who we can refer to through to legal teams, etc. So it is making sure that the whole professional community works together to help the business that's after the investment.
That's interesting, the sort of collaborative approach you've taken to that. Are you working with like local partners around Cumbria? Is that what you're saying?
So we're building that framework. So Jonathan will touch on that in terms of who he's talking to. I mean, what I always say to people when I'm out at the moment is we've got 30 years history of doing it in Liverpool. So all we're doing is bringing it out into the wider regions. So again, it's nothing new for us. It's just building that black book of who are the friends in that collaboration. I know, Jonathan, do you want to touch on who you're talking to? I think you mentioned a few name drops already, haven't you?
Yeah, sorry, there's a danger I'll be repeating myself, but it's meeting these people in person. But, without a doubt, it's the rounded approach that we give. So, yes, I can look at an application, it's 25 to £100,000. A business is successful, but I want to approach on a wider basis. So, to get to know the council, to get to know the chamber, to get to know the university, obviously know Maria from the Access to Finance team. There's a lot of work to do, and it would be wrong of me to say, oh, well, here we are, and we've got loans 25 to 100, and it'll be easy. So, my job is, of course, it'll be a mix of online meetings and face-to-face meetings. That's absolutely inevitable. But my initial work, Joe, is to get to know the wider support network. We've done a little bit of groundwork, but it's undoubtedly work in progress. And there will be plenty of people out there that I do not know yet, and they don't know me. So, we'll get there. It'll just take a little bit of time.
Yeah, you've touched on some of the challenges there that businesses face. Are there any challenges you've seen businesses face in Cumbria or elsewhere that are kind of common challenges that you see everywhere? And how does River Capital help businesses overcome these?
Yeah, so we've kind of touched on that a little bit. Businesses are coming to us very early in the project. So it used to be a while back, where businesses would come to us with a funding need, and it'd be, the likes of Jonathan would just fill the credit paper in, agree the loan, job's done, project's away. But now people are coming to us, they maybe haven't got a strong relationship with the banks, so they haven't had the support and guidance that they need. So they're coming to us and saying, I want to do X project, but they don't know how to fully fund it. So we're almost helping to signpost them into, back into their bank if it's a commercial mortgage, the broker market for an asset finance facility, invoice discounting facility, and then trying to build that investment structure so that we know where our funding can fit in. And we are getting involved a lot earlier in that process, and that takes up time. And we're always happy to have the conversation, but it's a lot more conversation than we used to have historically. And again, maybe a question for you, Joe, is how many funders do you see out in the Cumbria market? So are people having these conversations with lenders and investors frequently to know what we are asking for?
Sure, that it's a good point. Yeah, and I'm sure our members would have a better idea than I do. Yeah, have you found that kind of when you're gathering intel? Are these conversations taking place?
I'm not about to critique any of my peers on. No, the conversations are going on, and it does happen. It's just, I think there's a lot of SMEs, and, River as an example, we've got one investment manager covering Cumbria, a lot of geography and a lot of SMEs. There's only so many conversations we can have. And so, it's a challenge. That is one of the challenges of making sure that conversation reaches out far and wide. And again, that's where that professional network and the collaboration needs to be involved. I imagine there's a lot more professionals in Cumbria than we're talking to at the moment, and are they having the similar conversations with SMEs and kind of in a collaborative approach?
Yeah, interesting. Well, hopefully we can contribute to that with this podcast today. Moving on now to kind of growth sectors in Cumbria. This question is for you, John, but what sectors do you think have the best potential for growth over the next 5 years?
So in Cumbria specifically, and linking it to the Northern Powerhouse Fund 2, that fund has been enabled to now deal with B2C businesses, so your hospitality and leisure type businesses. And we know Cumbria is strong on that tourism angle. So that's a new sector of funding that kind of has been unlocked for Cumbria. But on the wider piece, it's an interesting county because there's a lot of engineering, a lot of manufacturing, there's a strong energy sector. So, all those sectors we can look at now and we can deal with. I'm just thinking again, the future of lending is that green energy sector. So there'll be businesses in Cumbria in the energy sector that will be pivoting, and the supply into those sectors will also have to change with the green energy push. So it's, again, we don't exclude anything in our funding. And actually, Cumbria's got a quite broad spectrum of sectors in there.
Sure. Yeah. So kind of renewable energy, those sort of industries are going to be huge in the future. And you think that a lot of that could be happening here in Cumbria?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, if you think about it, if we're pivoting towards green energy, it's a good thing for Cumbria could we touch back on that social side of things? Of there are quite a lot of people employed by the energy sector in up there. If the energy sector changed and Cumbria didn't change with it, there's a lot of unemployment that could happen. So it's making sure that businesses can try and do that pivot if they need to and preserve those jobs in Cumbria.
Interesting. Can you give an example of where River Capital has had a transformative impact on an SME, kind of similar to the ones that we have here in Cumbria?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I can't name drop any particular companies, but purely because it's what we do as a business. So every business that comes to us has a transformational vision, and we're trying to support that. So it's maybe a startup that's, you're in employment, you've left your employment and you want to start your own business. Can we help with that journey? A business that's going through that 3-year cycle, can we help support that journey? Through to established businesses that maybe need succession planning, and need the next layer of management coming in to drive the business on. All those projects are transformational for that individual SME. And they're all the types of things that we try and fund. We talk to a lot of SMEs, and it's always about what's their individual vision and goal, and how can we play alongside that and help them. Broad brush examples are ones that off the top of my head is we've looked at a startup business that wanted to do a buy and build in the haulage sector. So it's haulage and warehouse. So we went in day one effectively to help them with a loan. And by about year 3 of this buy and build strategy, we had a great conversation where they said mainstream funders are interested and would like to pay you off to help us drive the business further. That was a great conversation because we had enabled that business to grow to a point where mainstream funding could step in and provide them support to take them to that next level. And it's those little conversations that we like to support is, can we fill that gap, that alternative funder market? Another one we've looked at, it's had 4 rounds of investment from us. So a small manufacturer in Knowsley at the time, they're now talking about European expansion, and we're again giving them that support, collaboration, having to bring in advisors around them to say, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? So again, we've helped them on that journey. I'd like to think of, a Knowsley-based manufacturer that's gone into European expansion is quite transformational for them.
Yeah.
So
that's inspiring.
Yeah, it's a common thread that goes through all of our investments is we're trying to help fuel ambitions.
Fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. Jonathan, is there anything you'd like to add to that one?
I see a lot of businesses that maybe just decide themselves, oh, perhaps that's not, perhaps that's not for me, perhaps I shouldn't apply. But I'd like to be able to sort of say to people, make that decision. So I would always sort of encourage people, don't decide no until you've actually spoken to me. If River Capital, and I do the Northern Powerhouse loan, but if I feel that isn't right for the business, you will tell them. If we have to sit side by side with another funder, we would look at that. If perhaps debt isn't right for the business, well, you might suggest, alternatives. Can we signpost and provide that bigger wraparound, that wraparound package? So, yeah, just don't want us to be seen as what I would class as a transactional lender that we provide. Yes, we provide that loan, but we also provide a far more rounded package or service to the businesses. But I've got a lot of knowledge to pick up, Joe, in the coming months and years, hopefully. But like I say, we'll get there. We will get there.
Brilliant. Yes, well, hopefully we can put some points and businesses in your direction to kind of explore this in further detail. John, could you just let us know what's the best way for businesses to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, so probably the best place to go is our website. On there's all our funds. There's details of the whole team, the business. So it's a one-stop shop for, and the overview of what River Capital is. And through there, you can get the links to, drop an inquiry to us or contact us directly. So that's rivercapitaluk.com. And I'm sure you will share that with your listeners as you push this out, hopefully.
Yes, we can do that. We'll put it in the notes. So yeah, if you're listening, just have a look in the notes, and I will have hopefully remembered to include the link there. But yeah, no, great. You'll see this in our newsletter and on social media as well. But yeah, thank you very much for being with us, John and Jonathan.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.